All right. Hi, everybody, and hello, and welcome to today's webinar on taking the fear out of change, immediate benefits of switching to ArcGIS Pro. I'm Mark Ho, a technical solutions specialist here in the Vancouver office and a proud old-timer BCIT grad. And co-presenting with me today is Erica Corbett, an associate GIS analyst who's also in the Vancouver office, and she is a recent COGS graduate. And we're both really happy to be here joining us today for this webinar. If you don't know, if you haven't attended one of our webinars before, we are recording the session, and we'll email you the recording along with the slides after the webinar. And if you have any follow-up questions about today's content, please feel free to contact Erica or myself. Our email addresses are on the slide. If you have any questions about today's presentation, please use the Q&A panel. Be sure to choose Ask All Panelists, then type in your question in the box and click Send. We'll also pause throughout the webinar to take some of your questions, and at the very end, we'll have a large Q&A session. So we'll be taking your questions throughout the presentation. So please feel free to type in your questions at any time. All right, so we've got a lot to cover today. This webinar has been designed because I know a lot of you out there are thinking about transitioning from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro. So the key components of today's talk is to be able to first understand the key differences between the two different products. And then we're going to go through a migration process, being able to take something that's currently in ArcMap and be able to migrate that successfully into ArcGIS Pro. And then finally, we'll review some of the key new functions that are unique to ArcGIS Pro. So once you finish that migration process, you can go ahead and start taking advantage of all the cool things that ArcGIS Pro has to offer. So with that, I'm going to pass things off to our main presenter, Erica, who's going to talk about some of the key differences between the two products. Erica.
Okay, thanks for the introduction, Mark. As Mark said, my name is Erica Corbett. I'm here in the Vancouver office, and I'm really excited to be here as well. So the purpose of our first topic here today is really to give you an honest perspective of the differences between ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro. So I'll kind of get this over with right away and just say it. I'm still more comfortable using ArcMap. So I think I can really relate to everyone who's joining today. As I expect many of you watching here are still more comfortable in ArcMap software, but the more and more I expose myself to ArcGIS Pro, the more comfortable I get, the more impressed I am by it. How about you, Mark? Would you say you're more comfortable using ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro?
Well, I kind of have a different perspective because the first GIS product I used is ArcInfo Workstation. So I've been from Workstation to ArcView 3 to ArcGIS Desktop, and now to ArcGIS Pro. So I've kind of gone through this transition period a few times, but I do have to admit, I mean, it was a tough transition at the beginning from ArcMap because we're so used to it. But once you get the hang of ArcGIS Pro and start using it more and more, you almost forget that ArcMap even exists. So I really do love ArcGIS Pro. I don't even have ArcMap on my machine anymore. I just primarily use Pro for everything. So hopefully that will inspire some of you to make that migration process as well.
Yeah, totally inspirational. Okay, so by the end of this, we hope to make you feel a little better about ArcGIS Pro, and we'll give you some tips on how to immediately get started with it today. Okay, so probably the scariest thing about first using Pro is the difference in interface. So hopefully after chatting about this and showing you a demo, you'll see that it's actually pretty intuitive, and like anything, it just requires some getting used to. So number one here, I just want to talk about the interface for a second. The quick access toolbar, which I'll show you in a minute, has some commonly used commands, and this is customizable. I'll show you how to customize a bit later. The Explore tool here at number 2 is used to navigate maps and identify features through pop-ups. We also have our ribbon tabs, such as the Analysis tab here, which organize functionality. So when a tab is selected, those associated tools display on the ribbon. We have dialog boxes here, and those are really small, and I remember when I first started using Pro, I totally missed these. So these kind of launch open a little pane or a dialog box with more options and functionality of each group here on the ribbon. And groups organize functionality on a tab. We have the contextual tabs, which appear under specific conditions. So depending on the layer that you have selected in your table of contents, ribbons will appear to give you tools for that specific type of layer. And then, of course, we have our buttons and our tools, which execute those software actions. Okay, so panes. Panes replace a lot of the modal dialogues that you have in ArcMap, which used to pop up and like block what you were doing, right? So if you're changing your symbology or something, you have a box that pops up in ArcMap, and you can't really play with your map anymore, pan around your map when that pop-up is in the way. So the panes, like the catalog pane here on the side, as well as any geoprocessing tools, as you'll see in a minute, allow you to keep working with the map and just dock to the side these panes. For instance, the catalog pane here is docked to the side, and you can still use the map freely. Next here, views. So views of maps, 3D scenes, tables, layouts, they can all be docked side by side, or they're in these little view tabs, which you see here in that screenshot there. So number one here is showing you just a map view, the window that displays the map. And as I said at number two, every view has a tab that can be used to close or move the view, and the active one is highlighted in blue. The contents pane over here for number three, just like your table of contents in ArcMap, lists the layers in the active view. And of course the ribbon, which we just went over, which provides those commands that can be used based on what is selected in the contents pane. So another difference that I want to go over between ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro is the whole concept of map documents versus projects. So here I'm referring to an MXD document from ArcMap versus an APRX file extension for ArcGIS Pro. So this APRX extension is a project format, which allows users to have multiple maps within the same project. So it does take a little bit of getting used to in this format, but it makes sense if you think about working in the context of different projects, which contain different maps, different layouts, and keeping those all in the same place. So all of these projects can be easily packaged and shared, which I'll show you a little later today. Last up here on this slide is layouts. So in ArcGIS Pro, several layouts can be added to a project and used to export specific data or map or characterize data that you have. So if you create a template for a layout, you can copy and paste that template. That's absolutely doable as well. It was kind of like working with different data frames in ArcMap and creating several layouts from those data frames using the same template. Here in the bottom graphic, you can see two layouts side by side. This is something I'll show you guys a little later in this session. Okay, so editing. Another huge difference between ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro is that there's no longer starting and stopping of edit sessions. So you simply would go to the tab on the edit tab on the ribbon, and begin selecting which tool you would like to use without having to start or stop the editor. With that being said, there is still a save button though for edits. So if you're maybe migrating from like CAD to GIS, this might be good news to you because you're probably more used to freely editing. Editing feature services. So you can bring feature services directly into your map in ArcGIS Pro right from the portal. Make your edits really quickly, sync that back up to ArcGIS Online or portal for ArcGIS. Whereas ArcMap would allow you to kind of view these services, but with Pro you can actually just pull in the layers and edit them in real time, assuming of course you have editing privileges. So this is really handy if you're making like minor updates to layers hosted in a web map from ArcGIS Online or portal. Next, schema changes. So you can see here I have this graphic. Schema edits are really nice in Pro. As you see here, this is a nice large view without having to go through like the Arc catalog menu like you did in ArcMap. Like if you need to rename a field or make adjustments to a domain, we used to need to go to the properties of the geodatabase file within our catalog, but now you get this nice full view and you can save these right to the geodatabase. Next up, I'll quickly mention the difference between Python versions. I want to explain how to deal with these differences a little later in my second demo, but just to mention right now, because it is a key difference, um, ArcMap used Python version 2. I think the last one was 2.7, while ArcGIS Pro uses version 3. I think we're on version 3.6 now. We'll talk about this a little later, but I did just want to mention it as it's something to think about if you are bringing over custom tools or scripts. And lastly here, sharing options. So there's even more sharing options in ArcGIS Pro. You can share something directly to ArcGIS Online as a web map or a web layer. We have project packages and whatnot, which I'm going to show you here in my first demo. So with that, I'm going to share my screen here. And I'll pull up ArcGIS Pro. Okay, so just gonna move that. Okay. All right, so this is the screen you will see when you first open up ArcGIS Pro. There is a sign in up in the upper right hand corner. I'm just going to sign out right now and show you this pop-up will come up if you're not signed in. It will close in 60 minutes if I don't sign in and tell ArcGIS Pro my licensing portal. So I'll quickly sign back in, and I'm signing in with my unique identity here, which is a organizational account with ArcGIS Online. And I get this pop-up here. I've successfully connected and will continue to work normally. Perfect. So you can see here the interface of the project page. I have the option to open up some recent projects that I've been working on. There are some templates here, which I'll talk about later, that I could use to start a new project. Or I could just simply choose to start up Pro without a template at all if I just want to, quickly pull in some data and look at it without actually creating a project. Let's look at the settings here for a second. So here we can see some product information. I'm actually on the beta version of the new ArcGIS Pro 2.4. So you guys get to see a little sneak peek. It looks pretty similar to what you may have though, whether you're on 2.3 or the latest version. So here's where you can check for software updates as well. This checkbox gives me a little pop-up on startup if I do have an update to make, but you can disable that if you don't want those pop-ups. I'll quickly touch on licensing here. So Pro can be licensed in a few different ways. The most popular is probably a named user license, which is what I have here, of level 2. Or you can still use single or concurrent use licenses. You can see my licensing portal here is with ArcGIS Online. And let's look at the portals menu here for a second. So you can add as many portal connections as you like. My current portal I'm using is with ArcGIS Online. We can see the green check mark there. It is my active portal. But I also have an enterprise deployment on my machine, and I can switch back and forth. Here's my portal for ArcGIS. And by just right-clicking and setting one of them as my active portal, it's a really easy switch. Okay, I'm just going to click the back button here, and let's actually open up a project. So like I said, ArcGIS Pro is project-based. It automatically creates a project folder when you make a new project, as well as it creates a geodatabase for that project. So let me just bring up Windows Explorer for a second, and I'm just going to go into my documents. This is where I chose to save my projects in my documents there, but you you have the option to change wherever your projects go. So I'm in my Pro webinar project right now. So just so you see what that looks like in Windows Explorer, it creates this Pro webinar geodatabase for me automatically. I did not create this. We have a Scratch geodatabase, which is mainly used by like Model Builder and scripts as a location to write output data, or yeah, it's always available to write and output to the Scratch geodatabase. I have some Python history in here of Python that I've run. I have my ArcGIS server connections. I have a few styles in here that I've added. I actually have my APRX project file, which if I double click on this, it will open up my Pro webinar project. A project also will create a toolbox as well. So I have my Pro webinar toolbox, and then I have a few extra folders up here, some MXD documents that I've imported. It has the metadata for those, and the index here just has like some thumbnails that I have in my project is held in there. So that's what it looks like in the back end. And then when you come into ArcGIS Pro, here's a pane that I was talking about earlier, the catalog pane. So here you can see I have several different maps stored in this project. The toolbox I was just showing you, it's empty right now, but it's there if you want to start creating some models inside of it. I also have, you can still create folder connections just like you would in ArcMap by right-clicking on folders. Any tasks, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Styles, which we'll get into a little bit later, and your locators as well. Oh, as well as the database, geodatabase that was created for me. So let's take a look at the ribbon for a minute. The Map tab here has many of the commonly used tools from ArcMap, such as the selection toolset here. The Explore tool is new. It combines the zoom, pan, and identify tools all into one. Also, if you ever lose your little like white Mickey Mouse hand here and you want to get it back, so for example, if you're using the select tool and you don't know how to get back to your Mickey Mouse hand, just click on the Explore tool and that'll come back. So one thing to note really about the interface is that Pro does not have toolbars like ArcMap. So the functionality is all in the tabs and some context views. So if I click on a layer here, I have a vector line of active travelways in Halifax. I'm not sure if you noticed, but a few extra tabs appeared up here in the ribbon. So if I look up here, maybe I'll click on labeling, I can see that it's giving me options for a line feature class up here. If I change it to a polygon, the ribbon changes contextually. If I change this to some raster data, so right now we're looking in Halifax, my hometown represent. I have this digital elevation model of Nova Scotia in the background here. So if I change my selected layer in the table of contents to raster, you can see the ribbon updates. So if, for example, if I choose the appearance tab here, I have options for raster data here, not vector at all. So that's kind of cool. One useful tool here I'd say would be the swipe tool, especially with raster data. You can swipe, see what's behind any imagery that you have draped over one another. Okay, so get back to my Mickey Mouse hand. I'm going to go back and click on the Explore tool. All right, so I also want to just go through the ribbon a little bit more here. So in the View tab, you can access the catalog pane, and you can actually have a catalog view, which takes over the screen here. Instead of opening up a separate program like our catalog, we can just do everything right here within ArcGIS Pro. So let's say I want to make some schema changes like I was talking about. I can go to the Data tab here. Maybe I'll make a schema change to my parks. So if I go to the Data tab, I can open up this Fields view, which gives me this really nice full view of my fields. So let's scroll to the bottom here, I'm just going to add a new field, maybe editor, if I'm going to do some editing and I want whoever is doing that editing to just put their name in the attribute table. And I'll make this, press enter there, I'll make this type text. I'm not going to spend a lot of time filling that out, but if I want to go make some edits now after these changes get applied, so I now have an editor field, I can click on my HRM Parks, make sure that's highlighted in the table of contents, click on the Edit tab, and like I said, there's no starting or stopping edits. I can immediately start creating features. So if I want to add a new park, I think I saved a bookmark here for a proposed park. I could click on my layer over here in the Create Features pane, and then I can choose what construction tool I'd like to use. Maybe in this case, I'll just choose the square here, and then I could double-click to finish my edit, just like in ArcMap. And I could either press the attribute button here to start filling those in, or there is a arrow here to start filling in my attributes about this newly digitized park. So I'll just do a couple here. Let's say the owner is the city of Halifax. Just fill in a couple of these. The editor is going to be me. Park name, I believe this is in Mount Hope, and so on. So I can press save now to save those edits. So there is still the concept of saving your edits. I'm just going to go back here. So I'll show you a bit later how to have some default attributes filled in automatically. And another thing I also mentioned was the Share tab. So let's say I'm going on vacation. I'm going down to Vegas. I want to give Mark all of my work, and he's going to have to work on this while I'm poolside. So I can go to the Share tab here, and if I choose, I could choose to just package up this one map, Halifax Recreation Map, and this is the same as the map package in ArcMap. But we also have what's called a project package now, which I mentioned a moment ago. So I can package everything, all of the maps in my project, all of the data, the symbology, any customizations. By clicking on the project tool up in the ribbon, it brings up my package project geoprocessing tool over here in the pane. So if I want to upload this package to ArcGIS Online, and Mark can then go download it from there, that is fine, and unpackage it. Or I can save it to a file and give it to him on a USB stick if I wanted. So Pro Webinar, edits, project package of my ArcGIS Pro Webinar demo. And then tags here are really, really important for being able to search later. So if you're like me, you have a lot of content in your ArcGIS Online content page there, and you're going to want some decent tags to make this project package searchable to you later. Or especially if you're sharing something with all of ArcGIS Online publicly, you're going to want to make it searchable. So here I'm just going to put in a couple tags to make this searchable for Mark. And if Mark and I were in a group here, maybe we are in this Esri Canada training group together, I would choose which group I wanted to share it with here, and I can choose what I want to include in the package as well. So there's still this analyze button in whenever you're sharing something in ArcGIS Pro, similar with the ArcMap service editor. One thing I really love about this part is when you have an error up here, a lot of the time you can right-click on it, an error or a warning, and resolve it right here in this window. So I'm just telling it to remove items with errors, and then I could reanalyze that again, or I can just package it up and yes, you can save those changes, and it'll package up my project now. So I'm just going to go back to the screen. I'll show you that later in my portal. I'm just going to go back to the PowerPoint here, and I'll hand it over to Mark for some questions.
Great, thank you very much. Shout out Halifax. Gosh, you got me craving a donair now. I love donairs.
Oh God, don't get me started.
They are the best. It was a really interesting demo too. Like, okay, so our theme is being honest, and that was probably the biggest adjustment for me, going from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro is the whole editing thing, right? The whole idea of there's no edit session, right? There's no start editing or stop editing. You just make the edit, hit save, and it's done. That was a kind of a mind bend for me initially, but now it's great. I mean, you have so much more flexibility in terms of editing. It's just a lot easier having it with this format. It does make a big difference for sure. Okay, we're getting a ton of questions on the Q&A here, so keep firing away. And again, we'll answer a lot of these at the end of the presentation. But there is one theme that keeps coming up, and that is sort of the elephant in the room question, which is the future of ArcMap. So what's going to happen to ArcMap in the future? When should I migrate to ArcGIS Pro, etc.? So since we're being honest, let's kind of cut to the chase. So ArcMap is still being released. ArcGIS 10.7.1 is coming out as part of the user conference next month in San Diego, and ArcMap will be updated with that. And I believe they're also going to have an ArcMap 10.8, which will be coming out in the next year. But let's just face the facts. Eventually, active development in ArcMap is going to end at some point, and probably more sooner than later. So at this point, if you haven't begun that migration process, this is a great time to do it. Now, we're not going to abandon ArcMap, of course. We're still going to provide patches and updates and any kind of certifications that need to be done as part of the product lifecycle. So ArcMap is not going to cease to exist, over the next few years. We'll still continue to support it. But active development in ArcMap is going to probably end sooner rather than later. So this kind of gives you that incentive. Start using ArcGIS Pro, and you'll be able to make that migration a little bit more seamless in that sense. One more quick question, and this comes up all the time, and that is about how do you get ArcGIS Pro? So ArcGIS Pro is a separate product with ArcGIS Desktop. So if you are currently on maintenance and you have ArcMap in our catalog, you have access to ArcGIS Pro. It is a separate install, so you just run that installation. And you can run ArcGIS Pro and ArcMap side by side if you need to as well. But if you have desktop, you have Pro. So there's really no reason not to start installing and working with ArcGIS Pro right now. And if you want to, go to that My Esri website. You can download ArcGIS Pro right now and start playing. All right, so lots of good questions. Keep firing away. And now, if Erica's ready to go, we'll pass things back to Erica, who's going to take us through the next part of the demo. Let's go.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Okay, so loving the honesty this morning. Well, it is morning still over here for us in Vancouver. So now that we're a bit more familiar with the interface, let's talk about how you can get started with ArcGIS Pro today, like Mark was talking about. Do you remember the first time you opened up ArcGIS Pro, Mark? Was it a dark and scary place?
It was an exciting place. I mean, we got this new toy. We really wanted to play with it, so we cranked it open, and yeah, there was an initial shock, but
right.
But again, once you get used to it, it's pretty cool.
Awesome. Yeah. So let's see how easy it actually is. I'm gonna go through some tips here. Immediately, you can start to import your MXD documents. You can bring in your maps, scenes, layouts. It's pretty straightforward. Your scenes, which were the SXD file extension, or the globes, which were the 3DD extension, right into your ArcGIS Pro project within the Insert tab on the ribbon. So depending on your workflow, you might find it convenient to import a lot of these documents into a single project. And you can begin with any project and just start using the import map button, or the import button right right on the ribbon there. So when the map opens, it should look pretty well the same as it does in ArcMap, maybe a little bit better. So another thing I want to mention is the notifications button. So you'll notice next to your unique identity up in the upper right hand corner, there is a little bell, and you with a blue dot. So you'll see this blue dot here if you have you make any imports, you can read some messages about the import to see, hey, did my MXD document import successfully? Were there any errors? Is there anything missing? So we'll take a look at that in a minute here. You can also import your styles. So in ArcMap, this was a .style extension, and in ArcPro, it is a style X extension. So many styles have already been converted to this extension, and they're available through ArcGIS Online. Or you can import a style that you have saved locally. So by default, Pro doesn't install all of the styles, so that's good for you to know. This actually allows the program to install much faster, so that's a good thing. And then on the Insert tab in the ribbon, you can import styles that you need, or just go to Portal through the catalog pane and search up some styles to import. So when you do add a style from ArcGIS Online, it is copied to your computer, and you can continue to use that offline, which is great. Moving on here, you can immediately start adding in data, toolboxes, models, and scripts right into Pro, which you used in ArcMap. And this tool is awesome. I use it all the time. It's seriously great. It's a way for you to check if your custom tools or scripts will have any issues in ArcGIS Pro. You can bring models into this tool as well. I'll show you in a minute. So this tool is called Analyze Tools for Pro. And any issues identified will be included in the tool messages, and it'll also spit out this report file with some more detail on how to, it even gives you some tips on how to fix those issues if there are any. And the reason there might be issues, right, is because ArcGIS Pro uses Python 3, and the tools uses this 2 to 3 utility to review the Python code. And that can also be used directly from the command prompt, but I'll show you that today through this geoprocessing tool, Analyze Tools for Pro. So let's go right into the next demo here and talk about how we can get started with ArcGIS Pro today. Okay, so let's import an MXD document that I have, a map made in ArcMap. So I'm going to use the Import Map button. So there's a couple different ways to import a map, but I'll show you them both here. First, I'm going to import this submarine suitability map. So when you import a map, the map document opens as the main map view in ArcGIS Pro. I can see nothing showing up now. I think I have some scale dependency set on this layer. Once I zoom in a little further, hopefully it pops up here. I'm just going to add in a base map so that we can see where we are in the world. Since this is data on submarines, I'll add in the oceans base map, and let's see where we are. Okay. So anyone who knows me knows I have a little interest in data in North Korea. I've shown it in demos before. So this one's just kind of cool. It shows a suitability analysis of North Korean submarine operations. So where the submarine cannot go is going to be red. Maybe it's too shallow in these areas. And areas where it could go will show up as green. So I just wanted to briefly show how to import this. This was made in ArcMap. Another way to import an MXD document would be through the catalog pane. Let me see here. So right-click, import, right in the catalog pane is another way to bring in some of your ArcMap documents. So this map shows the results of, we can see some analysis has been done on here. I see a buffer. This finds suitable sites for a new park near the Los Angeles River. So a totally different part of the world. But that came into Pro really nicely, and it's really quick to do. So I can see that my notification here, I have a blue dot above it. Let's just see what that brings up. So it brings up this notifications pane, and it tells me, hey, you've imported two ArcMap documents. I can view these results, and I can see that the map or scene was imported successfully. So most of the time, your imported maps should look the same as your original map document, but ArcGIS Pro does have a different drawing engine than ArcMap. So if it can't access a data set or anything, there'll be an indicator to repair any layers right over here in the table of contents, or you'll get a message in your notifications window. Okay. This particular map, I also had a model made for it in ArcMap. So if let's see, where is this model? Okay, I'm just going to right click on this model and click edit. And it'll take a second here, but I'm not going to run it right now for the sake of time, but it's actually already been run, right? And the results are shown over here. We can see that it looks the same as it would have in ArcMap here. So I could rerun this right now, or I could double click on anything and change some parameters, just like I would be able to do in ArcMap. But if we wanted to check this model, rather than just go ahead and run it right away, let's check out this tool I was talking about called Analyze Tools for Pro. So I just switched to my geoprocessing tab down here. If you do not see this tab, it is in the analysis window. You can click on the tools button and the geoprocessing pane will come up. So your recently run tools will display here, and I have recently run this Analyze Tools for Pro. If you don't see it, you can always perform a search on it. So let's put that model in here. It was in my analysis data. I'm going to put that whole toolbox right here in my input. And I want my output to, maybe I'll name it report, to be in the same folder there. And when I run the tool, it'll spit out this report. Let me open up my Windows Explorer here. It was in my D drive. And we'll look at that with maybe Notepad++. I can see here, no problems. Thank you, ArcGIS Pro, for the great little success message. So this toolbox should work flawlessly in Pro. But what if you do run into a problem? What does that look like? So I already mentioned being able to run scripts in ArcGIS Pro, and this should be pretty seamless. I have a simple Python script here, which I'll just show you here in Windows Explorer for a second. And all this does is list feature classes, and then it renames them, and it prints those out. So I'm expecting this to hopefully run okay. So I want to bring this Python script right into my Pro tool. And one thing I'll mention too about the whole geoprocessing pane in general is that after you run a tool, the geoprocessing pane stays up and it's ready to go again. So you'll notice that I have a little warning here beside my output parameter, and that's because it's just warning you, hey, we're ready to run this tool again, but you already have something in your system named this. So if I simply update the title of this, that warning message should go away. But in this case, I want to run a totally different script here, so I'm just going to drag that over from Windows Explorer. It's kind of cool that you can do that. And then I'm going to rename this in the proper folder here. Maybe I'll just call this again a report. I'll run the tool. And here I notice the tool did complete, but it has some warnings. So I just hover over this warning here. It actually tells me exactly the errors that it found. And that is the same as within the report that should have gotten spit out here. If I open this up in Notepad++, I see that it's telling me, hey, we found some Python 2 to 3 errors. Specifically, they're on line 15 of your code. And it tells me how to fix them, which is pretty awesome. So this is just a simple syntax error. I had printfc written, which is the way we would have done it in Python 2. We now need to change that to printfc with brackets. So I can quickly edit my code, add in those brackets on line 15, save it, and then if I ran that again, let's call this report 2, it should complete without errors. So that's kind of a cool, great resource to be able to check your resources. If you are ever looking up, Python 3 syntax or anything, or if you ever need to know what version you are on in Pro in Python, if you ever forget, a really easy way is to just open up the Python window here on the View tab, and you can check your version right in here. Again, I need brackets in my print statements now. And it'll tell me, hey, you're on Python 3.6.8. Okay. So that was a few ways to show you how to get started in Pro right away. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint now and hand it back over to Mark, who's going to take some questions again.
All right, thank you very much. North Korea, huh? Should we call you Kim Jun Erica? Is that no? That's
is that going to be my new nickname?
No, don't worry.
My name tag changes.
We're just being silly here. Okay, so again, we're getting a ton of questions, and again, we'll try to address most of these at the end of the presentation. We can't go through all of them, but there are a couple that are reoccurring here. One is dealing with ArcGIS Pro and the ability to publish to ArcGIS server. And is this functionality going to be incorporated? So the good news is that it's been there since version 2.3, but we've kind of hidden it away. So there is a Python call that you can make to the create sharing draft, and you could do that in the arcpy.sharing module, and that will allow you through code to be able to publish your content from Pro to server. And even better news, the new release of ArcGIS Pro that's coming out in a few weeks, that we're seeing a preview of, version 2.4, that will be a user interface option to be able to publish content directly to your server in 2.4. So we finally listened. That functionality will definitely be there in a few weeks in 2.4. But if you really want to write some code and do it now, you have that option as well. Another common question here is about data-driven pages. So do we have that same ability to build a data-driven page in ArcGIS Pro? Absolutely, the answer is yes. We just renamed it. It's now called a map series, and you can access that through the layout ribbon. So once you have access to that, you can create map books, and there's a lot of cool little tools to be able to make those map books in Pro. No problems. Okay, so again, I'm going to tackle most of these questions at the end, but I'm going to pass things back to Erica, who's going to talk about some of the cool things you can do uniquely with ArcGIS Pro. Erica.
Okay, thanks, Mark. So moving right on here, you've gotten a little, hopefully more used to the interface. You've learned now how to bring in your maps, your models, your tools, your scripts, your data from ArcMap. Now it's time to actually start getting used to some of the new functionality and playing with that in ArcGIS Pro. So, here we go. There we go. I'm going to show you some really quick and simple ways you can customize ArcGIS Pro to suit your needs. So this includes adding favorites. So adding favorites to your catalog pane. Project favorites is a collection of, they could be frequently used folder connections or database connections or server connections, and you can add these favorite items to specific projects as needed, and then they'll show up along all projects from then on. So some organizational resources, for example, like an enterprise geodatabase, maybe where you hold a lot of your data that might be used by all projects. So this could be added automatically to every project you create. As well, adding in frequently used tools to the analysis gallery, which I haven't shown you yet, but I'll show you that in a minute for quick access to your most used tools. And then project templates. So we kind of briefly talked about projects and the whole project structure, but as well, the templates in Pro include some different aspects of a project that are important to complete maybe a specific task or achieve a specific goal. So a template could include, connections to folders that you need, or it could provide, certain schema-only data definitions or custom geoprocessing toolboxes, or it could deliver some kind of standard layout and style to your organization. So there's some basic templates in ArcGIS Pro to help get you started, which I'll show you here in a minute. And then I also like to mention tasks. I really love tasks. They're kind of a set of pre-configured steps that guide you and others through a workflow or a business process. So here you can see in my graphic, I have a task of a new facility site polygon. It lists all the steps here. So this might help like a new employee, or it might be used to just make sure that you and your colleagues are all kind of on the same page with how you do a workflow. Because as we know, in GIS, there's like a million ways to do one thing. So the steps are pretty cool because they also you can write up instructions for each step. You can link documentation in the instructions, and once you complete the first step, you just click the next button down here, and it'll tell you what to do next. So I'll go over that. I'm going to run a task for you guys in a minute. Next, I want to talk about 3D. So everyone's always excited about this topic, and how Pro handles 3D is probably one of the most exciting changes to take in. So it's really easy to create some realistic 3D visualizations to engage people, to support decision making. But another cool thing is that you can also turn your 2D data into 3D data really easily in a few clicks of a button, as long as you have the proper fields in your data. I'll show you that in a minute. And the local scenes and the global scenes, we can kind of compare this to ArcScene and ArcGlobe. A local scene in your you'll find this on the ribbon tab is a scene that is kind of zoomed into a city, such as this here. Whereas a global scene is something that takes the curvature of the Earth into play here. So, for example, if we were zoomed out to the whole world, and maybe we were viewing some climate data of a hurricane from Florida going up through Atlantic Canada, we would want to display that 3D data in a global scene. Okay, next thing I want to talk about here is the interaction with Portal. So it's pretty seamless. Whether you're logged into Pro with your online organizational account or your portal for ArcGIS, you're going to be able to access your content by clicking on the Portal tab in the catalog pane. So you'll also be able to access your groups, all Portal content, so all content shared up to ArcGIS Online if that's what you're using, as well as the Living Atlas, which is really cool. So I'll show you that in a minute. And you can bring these resources into your map right away, whether it's for viewing, editing, and so on, and you can sync that back up to the portal as necessary. Finally, sharing. I know I've already mentioned it, but Pro has more sharing options. One thing I didn't mention, you can author pop-ups you want to appear in your web maps and apps right in Pro. You can share 3D scenes. We've already looked at a project package, which I gave Mark some extra work while I go on vacation there, so he can download that from ArcGIS Online, which shares absolutely everything included in your project. And of course, there's still also the functionality of being able to export and print on the Share tab within the ribbon, any layouts that you might have. And with that, I'm going to go into my last demo of the day here. Okay, so I still have the same project open here, just a different map shown of Tokyo population density. And hopefully this is not too all over the place, but I just really want to show you guys, I'm going to start here with customizations and show you how easy it is to make your project your own and make it the most comfortable or useful for you here. So the first thing I talked about was the quick access toolbar. So these buttons up at the top, they stay there at all times, even if you are switching between different tabs on your ribbon. So you're going to want to put your most used tools in your quick access toolbar up here. So let's say I do a lot of editing or digitizing, and I use this Go to XY tool a lot to find certain areas of the world that I'm digitizing. I simply right click it and add that to my quick access toolbar. And I can easily remove something as well. Next, I talked about the favorites group in the catalog. So if I switch from my project view to my favorites view, I can see I already have my demos folder saved here because it's something that I use a lot across various projects. But to add something to it, you simply click Add Item, and it gives you some suggestions. So let's say something else you probably want to add in here would be maybe your ArcGIS server. I can quickly add in mine. It doesn't make me sign in because I have a single sign-in experience here, and now my ArcGIS server connection will always be right here in my favorites, and I can quickly find it across all projects. So that's pretty cool. I also talked about the analysis gallery. So if I switch to the analysis tab here on the ribbon, I purposefully have nothing in the gallery right now. So normally you'll see this really full of all commonly used tools. But to start adding tools into your analysis gallery that you use, it's pretty simple. I'm just going to open up the geoprocessing pane here. So let's say I know I'm going to be using my Analyze Tools for Pro tool quite a bit. Simply right-click on that tool and add it to my analysis gallery, and it pops up. So anything that I'm using a lot, I'll want to put that there and start to fill out my gallery. Okay. So another thing I mentioned was project templates. So I'm just going to go back to the project tab here on the ribbon, and that is kind of like your file menu was in ArcMap, but just a little more visual. So here you can see a few of the project templates that I mentioned that Pro provides to help you get started. So let's say you were opening up Pro and you wanted to build a 2D map. You just select the map template right away. To create a 3D global scene, you would select the global scene template or a 3D local scene. Maybe you want to start Pro as if you were opening up Art Catalog. If you select the catalog template, maybe data management is your primary focus, this would be a good template to start with. And so you can read about how to create your own project templates. There is actually a link right here in the main project page, so I encourage you to look into that. Okay, good. So I've shown you some customizations that that I wanted to talk about, and let's look at tasks next. So let's say I'm a new employee here at a company. Maybe I'm new here at Esri, and Mark created a workflow that he wanted me to follow here in ArcGIS Pro. So I'm just going to go back to my catalog here as I have a task in here already. And I'm going to import and open this task. This task already exists in your project. Yes. Okay. So I have this task. Maybe Mark created it for me. He wants me to locate a specific feature, select a portion of that feature, export it, and then do some editing on that exported feature class. So the first thing I'm going to do is select the task, click the right arrow to open it up, And you can see step number 1 is to import an MXD file. So if I click the Run button here, it should open up, should allow me to choose an MXD file. Just give it a second here. Okay, I have an error. Well, it wouldn't be a technical demo if I didn't run into an error, so that's fine. Cannot run command if it is not enabled. So I can quickly enable that. Sorry about this. Yes, I'll interrupt. I'm just going to go, you can see this opens up the task designer here. I'm just going to quickly update this command. I can see if I go back, there was no command listed there. Well, you know what, we're just going to blame Mark for this because he created this task. So let's just blame him.
Sure, I'll take all the blame. That's fine.
Yeah, I can bully Mark. He can take it. So I'm just adding in the import command here into the task. I'm going to press OK. I'm going to press Done. And I just close my task designer for now. Okay, let's hope and pray that this task works now. So the first thing Mark wants me to do, voila, is to import an MXD file. So I'm going to import this fire analysis MXD, which was made in ArcMap. And I'll press next here. I can see nothing showed up. Maybe it, oh yeah. So same as ArcMap, you get this these little red exclamations when the link might be broken where it can find your data. You know, sometimes it's good when you run into some trouble doing demos because you get to show other functionalities you weren't expecting. Okay, so I can click next step now. I can see that it's not grayed out. And next it wants me to choose a layer from this map and add an SQL clause to select features. So I have 3 feature classes here. I'm going to just choose my roads one. I'm going to make a new selection. You can see that Pro has this nice SQL builder. So maybe I'll choose roads that are highways. And I'll click Run here. So that's actually running a geoprocessing tool within the tasks pane here. So you can see it highlighted my highways, and I'm going to click on Next. Okay, so now we're going to export that roads highlighted feature class that came up. So yes, I'm going to export my selected roads feature class, and I'm just going to call this roads in Belize, or maybe I'll just call it highways here. I'm going to run this, and I'll click Finish because I'm done my task. Yay! So if I go back to my contents, my highways layer has added, and we can see if I turn off all the rest, it is just the highways itself. Okay, so if let's say I'm looking at roads, so let's add in a base map here, maybe the streets one. And if we want to edit our new highway layer here, just really quickly, because we are short on time here, I know I mentioned I would show you how to make these edits. Just going to click the Create button here. I know I mentioned I would show you how to make attributes default for your when you're doing a lot of editing and you don't want to have to type those in every time. So if I just select the layer in the Create Features pane that I'm interested in editing, I can open up the Manage Templates button, create a new template for my highway layer, and I'll just call this highways template for now. I can go over to the attributes section of this, and I can start to fill in my default attributes that I'm interested in. So, for example, road type here, if I'm editing highways, right now I just always want it to fill in highways for this attribute. For lanes, we'll say these are all going to be 2-lane highways that I'm editing, and so on. So just press OK here. And I now have this highways template that I can highlight. and I can immediately start to digitize a line. I know we're running out of time here, but if I open up the attributes window, oh, it didn't choose my right template here. So my highways template, just going to digitize another line here to quickly show. If I go over to the attributes, it had already filled in those default attributes that I had filled in that create features group template there. So the default attributes appear. I could then go ahead and share this if I wanted as a web map. Remember, there is still this concept of saving our edits. And I could go ahead and share this or export it or create a layout out of it if I wanted. So I just do want to quickly move on before we finish up here and bring in some 3D data quickly. So I have this zoning map in Halifax where I have some building heights. So I have a layer which has a height field in it, and this means, hey, I can turn this into some 3D data if I want. So to show you how easy that is, the first thing that I'm going to want to do on the View tab is convert this to, for this case, we're going to use a local scene because we're looking at downtown Halifax here again. Halifax represent. Okay, so it's loading up my zoning 3D layer, but I can see that this still doesn't look very impressive, right? I still have 2D data here. So what I'm going to do is just going to drag in my buildings up into the 3D layer section, and we can see still not looking too hot. I do have this elevation surface layer at the bottom here. We can see it's using ArcGIS World Elevation Surface. If I had a DEM that I wanted to use instead, I could simply add that elevation surface in here. So what you're going to want to do if you want to display your 2D data as 3D data is on the Appearance tab in the ribbon, we have this group called Extrusion that appears once we're in a 3D scene. So I can extrude these by their height. So you can see it's starting to look a little bit better. But what I want to do is actually stretch them. So the field in my attribute table is called height. And I can write an expression in Arcade to kind of stretch these. So I'm going to multiply them by a factor of 20, and now I can see it was that easy to turn my 2D data right into 3D. Okay, so another option that I would have to bring in some 3D data, would be to access the portal tab over here in the catalog. Maybe I'd want to look in the Living Atlas. And there's some options in here to bring in some 3D data or even data that's updating in real time, like the World Traffic Service image layer hosted by Esri. So there is that seamless interaction with Portal as well. So I'm just going to go back to the PowerPoint now as we are running out of time. And I'm going to hand it back over to Mark.
Helps if I unmute. There we go. Awesome. Thank you very much. So just as a summary, here's some of the big benefits of using ArcGIS Pro. So it is a lot faster in many aspects. We are now taking advantage of that full 64-bit application. So you'll be able to process through a lot faster, and we saw a lot of these other advantages as well. We have ribbons, we have dockable panes and views, being able to share your content. These are all very powerful stories to hopefully get you to begin that migration process to ArcGIS Pro. All right, so let's go and finish this off. So hopefully in this last hour, we showed you some of the key differences between ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro, and hopefully that will inspire you to start that migration process. We talked about how to be able to migrate a simple MXD into ArcGIS Pro, and Erica did a really nice job showing some of the cool new functions that Pro has to offer. Now, when you get the PDF for this, these links will be available to you. So if you want to check out some of these resources, some different links in the documentation, there's a really great migration guide that you might want to check out. And there's also some press books that's been created from Redlands that in the good old book form to be able to talk about some of this migration stuff as well. So definitely take advantage of these resources. There's also some training courses that are related to migration from ArcGIS, from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro. That's a really popular class, so we really highly recommend that. And there's some other courses as well that talk about some of the key workflows in ArcGIS Pro. So want to take advantage of those as well, especially tasks. I think tasks are one of the coolest things of Pro that people should take advantage of. Now, this is sort of the last webinar in June, but we do have webinars throughout the summer, so there's 3 coming up. A really popular one is going to be location tracking, so that'll be something that many of you will be interested in. We also got some open data portal stuff and the brand new next generation of ArcGIS story maps, so that's also going to be a really interesting topic coming up down the road as well. So with that, we really thank you for sticking with us and coming with us to the end of this presentation. As we have already mentioned, this recording will be available online in a few days, so you will get an email that will give that information as well as a PDF of today's slides. And of course, if you have any questions about the content or any follow-up questions, or if we didn't get a chance to answer your question in the next few minutes, there are email addresses so you can give us a ping at any time. So, Erica, any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
No, just thanks everyone for coming, and I hope you guys get started with ArcGIS Pro soon. And reach out to us if you have any questions there.
Absolutely. Okay, so with that, and we're going to end the recording, and we'll start answering some of these questions.